Everyone knows how The Lord of the Rings ends, or at least they think they do. The ring gets destroyed, Aragorn becomes king, Frodo sails off into the sunset. Credits roll, right? But what if I told you that's just the beginning of the real story? That the fate of the Fellowship didn't end with a handshake or a hug, but unfolded in quiet corners of Middle-earth, through love, loss, legacy, and one last ship sailing west? This isn't some fan fiction deep dive or another rehash of Tolkien trivia. This is the untold journey, what happened after the battle stopped and the world kept turning. It's where true heroism steps out of the spotlight and ordinary choices become legendary. And here's the kicker, buried in these stories are timeless truths about leadership, healing and friendship that we still get wrong today. So, if you're the kind of person who's ever wondered what happened to Sam, or why Gimli and Legolas vanished into the sea, or what kind of King Aragorn really became, you're in the right place. Because in this journey, we're not just chasing dragons, we're uncovering the quiet power of what comes after the end. Boromir wasn't just a warrior, he was a man torn between duty, pride, and temptation. In The Lord of the Rings, his attempt to take the ring from Frodo wasn't just a moment of weakness. It was the reflection of a soul cracked by pressure and pain. But here's the twist. His fall became his rise. At Amon Hen, when the Uruk-hai came storming in, he didn't run, didn't beg. He stood his ground. 3 arrows pierced him, but none broke him. He defended Merry and Pippin with a fury that shook the very leaves of Middle-earth. Think about that. The same man who faltered tried to redeem it all with his final breath. That's not just bravery, it's leadership, the kind that doesn't wait for applause. Boromir showed us that your last act can define your legacy. It's a reminder that redemption isn't a fairy tale, it's forged in fire. When Aragorn finds him, Boromir's still holding on. Bloodied, broken, but still speaking of Gondor, still confessing his failure, still urging the Fellowship forward. That's the heart of a true leader, not perfection, but responsibility. And maybe you've made mistakes too, but the only real failure is pretending they didn't happen. His body, honored, is placed in an elven boat and set adrift down the Anduin, a quiet, noble farewell to a loud, turbulent soul. It's almost poetic, isn't it? The river carrying him toward the sea, as if Middle-earth itself was paying tribute. In Tolkien's world, even death has dignity. And in ours, maybe we should rethink how we see failure and the people who dare to own it. Boromir's end wasn't the end at all, it was the trigger. His death broke the Fellowship, scattered its members, and set them on paths they never expected. But here's where it gets interesting. Even in separation, the Fellowship's bond never truly snapped. Which brings us to what happened next, after the Horn of Gondor fell silent. When the dust of war settled and Aragorn was crowned King Elessar, the Fellowship stood together one last time, not as soldiers, but as brothers. Forever changed by fire, shadow, and sacrifice, the coronation wasn't just a victory for Gondor, it was a farewell to what once was. After Theoden's funeral, with honor paid and oaths fulfilled, they journeyed to Isengard. That final road wasn't about conquest, it was about closure. There's something sobering about seeing great heroes go their separate ways. You expect fireworks, maybe a grand banquet. But Tolkien knew better. Sometimes the most powerful moments are the quiet ones. Gimli and Legolas, unlikely friends, ride off together. Not to battle, but to explore the world they once fought to save. It's like 2 war veterans deciding to go hiking instead of heading home. Meanwhile, the others return to their corners of Middle-earth, not out of duty, but out of love. Aragorn remained to rule. Gandalf lingered to tie up ancient knots. Sam headed back to the Shire, heart heavy with memories. The Fellowship was never just about destroying the ring, it was about forging unbreakable bonds. And sometimes, letting go is part of holding on. Picture this in your own life when a chapter ends. Graduation, moving, parting with friends. It hurts, sure. But what if, like the Fellowship, the impact wasn't in staying together, but in what each person carries forward? That's legacy. Not clinging to the past, but transforming it into your next step. Aragorn didn't need the ring to rule. He needed the journey that led him to it. And so, the Fellowship walked their separate paths. But none ever truly walked alone. Because when you face darkness shoulder to shoulder, a piece of each other stays with you. Still, while most of them stayed behind, two of the most mysterious figures prepared for a voyage unlike any other. A final, sacred crossing that few in Middle-earth would ever witness. Frodo never truly came back from the quest, at least not the way people expected. Sure, he walked the roads of the Shire again, but his soul still limped through the memories of Mount Doom, of Shelob's sting, and the Witch King's blade. That's the thing about deep wounds. They don't always bleed on the outside. Gandalf knew this. He'd seen too much time, too many battles, and he carried wisdom heavy as a mountain. So when Frodo boards the ship at the Grey Havens, it's not about escape, it's about healing. He wasn't running from Middle-earth. He was moving toward peace. That ship, gliding westward, wasn't a boat, it was a blessing. And beside him, Gandalf, the once grey wanderer turned white, now finally at rest after weaving his fate across centuries. It's like watching two candle flames flicker into the wind, not extinguished, just carried beyond sight. You can think of the undying lands like Tolkien's version of retirement for the soul, earned, not gifted. Only those who bore true burdens could cross that sea. It's a powerful metaphor, really. In real life, healing often takes distance. Not just time, but a clean horizon. Frodo chose that path. And sometimes so must we, stepping away from noise to let the silence speak. And Gandalf, he tied his last loose ends, visited Tom Bombadil, said his goodbyes, ensured the world, had its kings and mayors and poets. For a being that had stood against Balrogs and Sauron, his final act was to simply rest. There's a lesson there. Even the strongest need peace. Even the wisest need release. Even the immortal need a home. The ship disappeared into the mist, and with it, a chapter of Middle-earth closed. But the story didn't end. It just shifted. Because while Frodo and Gandalf left behind a world they saved, they also left behind friends who would carry on their light. Especially one hobbit who refused to let the garden die. Back in the Shire, Samwise Gamgee wasn't just Frodo's loyal friend. He became its quiet savior. While others had swords and crowns, Sam had soil and hope. Armed with Galadriel's gift, he reawakened the land, planting seeds that carried the magic of Lothlorien. The trees blossomed like memories brought to life, and flowers bloomed where darkness once stood. That's the power of small acts. They heal what swords can't. He married Rosie Cotton, not a queen, but the queen of his heart, and built a family bursting with joy. 13 children, laughter echoing through Bag End, love as steady as the gaffer's old hands. It wasn't flashy, but it was powerful. Sam proved that building a life is just as heroic as saving one. If Frodo bore the burden, Sam bore the future. As mayor of Michel Delving, he became the voice of reason and compassion. Not because he craved power, but because he'd earned trust the hard way. By showing up over and over again. He wasn't the tallest hobbit in the room, but he stood tallest when it mattered, and that's the kind of leader we should all aspire to be. Rooted, humble, and deeply human. Even in old age, Sam never let go of the journey. He kept the Red Book close, a quiet tribute to all they had endured. And when Rosie passed, something shifted. He knew it was time. Just like Frodo, the pain never truly left. And so, he sailed west, last of the ring-bearers, bound for peace beyond the sea. Sam's story is a reminder that greatness isn't always loud. It can be found in gardens, bedtime stories, and silent courage. But even as the Shire flourished, under his care, two mischievous hobbits had their own tale unfolding, one of scrolls, songs, and unexpected legacies written in the halls of kings. Meriadoc Brandybuck and Peregrine Took, those two weren't just comic relief. After the war, they grew into leaders shaped by valor, books, and the bittersweet taste of maturity. Pippin became Thane of the Shire, Merry the Master of Buckland, titles earned, not handed down. But here's the beautiful twist. They didn't just lead with titles, they led with stories. Their memories of Middle-earth became maps for the future. Together, they dove headfirst into scholarship. Yeah, the same hobbits who once stole fireworks now compiled the Tale of Years, preserving the history of the Fellowship, the Ring, and all who fought. It wasn't about fame, it was about making sure no one forgot. Merry, ever curious, became an expert on Rohan and Gondor. Pippin, loyal and sharp, chronicled the truths hidden between songs and legends. This wasn't just nostalgia, it was nation-building through memory. Think of your own life. How much do you write down, journal, record your wins and wounds? Because that's how cultures grow, through shared memory, not just monuments. Merry and Pippin understood that. They honored the past, not by clinging to it, but by framing it so others could stand on it. In their later years, they returned to Gondor, not as soldiers, but as honored guests and living legends. And when the time came, they chose to be buried, beside Aragorn, their king and friend. It's powerful, isn't it, that the Shire's two wildest sons would lie in Gondor's silent stone. They may have come from pipeweed and prank wars, but they ended in poetry. But as the hobbits carved their legacy in ink and memory, one man reigned with a sword and a crown, a man who had walked the paths of the dead, loved an elf queen, and ruled a world once shattered. The tale of Aragorn's reign wasn't just about glory, it was about healing Middle-earth from the inside out. Aragorn didn't just wear the crown, he earned it with every step through shadow and sacrifice. As King Elessar, he reunited the fractured realms of Gondor and Arnor, forging peace where there had been fire. He didn't rule with fear or flair, but with wisdom tempered by hardship. The kind of wisdom you only get from walking through the ashes of Mordor and still choosing mercy. And Middle-earth responded. It began to heal. Under his reign, even former enemy lands were given a chance to thrive. The Haradrim, the Easterlings, those once considered lost causes, were given dignity. Treaties and trade. Aragorn didn't just end a war. He rewrote the politics of an entire continent. That's real leadership, not building walls, but bridges. Think of how rare that is, even today, leaders who listen more than they command. He ruled justly for over a century, side by side with Arwen, the Evenstar. Their love, forged in defiance of death, became a symbol across Middle-earth, but even in joy there was sorrow. Immortality was her sacrifice, and time was his price. They bore one son, Eldarion, raised to carry the torch, but that didn't make Aragorn's final decision any easier. At 210 years old, he chose his moment, not clinging to life, not waiting for decay, but stepping aside with grace, laying down to sleep in the House of Kings. Arwen, heartbroken, followed not long after, resting in the land of Lothlorien, once golden, now silent. Their passing wasn't a tragedy. It was a closing chapter written with beauty and pain, a love story echoing beyond time. And as Eldarion stepped into the light of a new age, the echoes of the old still whispered through the forests and rivers. But not all voices had faded. Far to the north and east, two old friends were planning something no one expected, a voyage that would break the laws of race, legend, and Middle-earth itself. Legolas and Gimli, elf and dwarf, fire and stone, song and steel. Their friendship wasn't just rare, it was revolutionary in Middle-earth. Born from battle, tested in war, and sealed in laughter, they broke every old rule between their peoples. After the ring was destroyed, they didn't drift apart. They traveled together, through Fangorn, across Rohan, into the deep halls of Aglarond, and the forests of Ithilien. Gimli became lord of the glittering caves, carving beauty from rock like a poet with a chisel. Legolas brought his people to Ithilien, making it the greenest land in Gondor once again, two kings in their own right, leading not with pride, but with presence. And as the years wore on, they stayed side by side, living proof that even the most ancient grudges could heal. That's not fantasy, that's a blueprint for real peace. When Aragorn passed, something shifted in Legolas. The sea longing stirred, deeper than ever before. But instead of going alone, he made a choice that shocked elves and dwarves alike. He brought Gimli with him. That voyage west had never been made by a dwarf. But love, loyalty, and legend made it possible. Sometimes the rules are just waiting for someone brave enough to break them. You can almost picture it, the white ship cutting across the waves, two friends standing at the bow. No more orcs, no more war, just starlight, memory, and the call of something greater. Gimli with axe in hand and Legolas singing to the wind, not fading, just crossing into a new page. The last echo of the Fellowship, slipping quietly into legend. And with their departure, the tale of the Fellowship, born in Rivendell, tested in fire and scattered across time, found its final breath. But what if I told you their legacy didn't vanish? That it still breathes through books, leadership, healing, and friendship? That's the real magic Tolkien left us with. And now it's time to tie it all together. So now you know, the Fellowship didn't fade into silence. They ruled, wrote, planted, healed, and crossed into legend. But here's the question that matters most. What are you doing with your own story now that the battle's over? Are you building like Sam? Leading like Aragorn? Writing your legacy like Merry and Pippin? Or are you still standing at the edge of your own grey havens waiting for a sign it's time to move forward? Tolkien's world may be fantasy, but the lessons are real, and maybe, just maybe, your next chapter deserves the same courage his characters carried. So if this opened your heart, stirred your mind, or made you feel just a little more connected to Middle-earth, don't let it end. Hit that subscribe button, turn on notifications, and join us as we keep exploring the stories no one else is telling, but everyone needs to hear.